The UN sanctions threat. Iran faces snapback in mid-October. The threat has materialized. In late September 2025, the UN Security Council automatically reimposed a broad array of international sanctions on Iran through the Snapback mechanism. This extraordinary, veto-proof action, triggered by the UK, France, and Germany, the E3, follows Iran's non-compliance with its nuclear obligations under the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. With the sanctions now legally reinstated, global attention shifts to the fallout. The threat of nuclear escalation, renewed economic turmoil, and diplomatic fracture at the United Nations. The veto-proof mechanism. The snapback mechanism, a core provision of UN Security Council Resolution 2231, was designed to allow any JCPOA participant to reinstate pre-2015 sanctions in the event of Iranian non-performance. After the E3 formally notified the Security Council on August 28, a 30-day clock began. Since no resolution was passed by the Security Council to prevent the sanctions from returning, with a Russian and Chinese resolution to extend sanctions relief failing, the measures automatically snapped back into force on September 28. The scope of the reinstated sanctions. The reimposed measures restore 6 previous UN Security Council resolutions. These sweeping sanctions immediately reinstate prohibitions against Iranian uranium enrichment and re-establish extensive restrictions on arms, conventional weapons transfers, and the country's ballistic missile and drone programs. Furthermore, they renew the blacklisting of individuals and entities connected to these programs, creating a universal legal framework that binds all UN member states to enforce the restrictions. The threat of nuclear escalation. The E3 triggered the snapback primarily due to Iran's massive stockpile of highly enriched uranium, a stockpile that exceeds the JCPOA limit by over 40-fold and includes material enriched up to 60% purity, a short step from weapons grade. In response, Iranian officials have previously warned that the restoration of UN sanctions could prompt the country to retaliate by withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT), or enriching uranium up to 90%, a clear nuclear red line. Economic fallout and global compliance. Although U.S. sanctions already limit Iran's ability to sell oil, the UN sanctions signal that Iran's nuclear file is now a matter of renewed global concern. The snapback is expected to further destabilize Iran's economy, which is already grappling with high inflation and a severely weakened currency, leading to citizens rushing to convert assets into gold. However, the impact on global oil flows may be limited, as major partners like China and Russia have publicly stated they will likely ignore the UN-imposed measures. Diplomacy's narrow path. The termination day for the snapback mechanism is October 18th. After this date, the Security Council loses its most powerful tool to penalize Iran, as any future sanctions would be subject to a Chinese or Russian veto. Western leaders insist that the channel for diplomacy remains open, urging Iran to return to talks to restore IAEA access and find a new diplomatic framework. The window for a verifiable diplomatic solution, however, remains extremely narrow as Iran rejects the sanctions as illegal and unjustifiable. Conclusion. The snapback of UN sanctions is a monumental geopolitical event, legally binding the world to pressure Tehran. Yet the crisis hinges on the actions of the world's major powers and Iran's response. The coming weeks leading up to the October 18th deadline will determine whether this pressure forces a return to compliance or pushes the Middle East toward further conflict and nuclear proliferation risk. If you enjoyed this deep dive, follow and subscribe the channel for more videos like this.